Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining. I'd like to start off by saying that this is not a review or a sponsored video of this Rockpals solar generator. I'm going to use this as a demonstration unit to talk about features of solar generators in general and what they mean and how they might or might not be important to you. We've gotten into the summer now, and so we're going to get into rolling blackouts here soon, most likely, and also hurricane season is right around us. So I know these are going to be very popular, and there's a lot of review videos out there of different brands, but I haven't seen a lot of information about what the individual features mean in the real world and how you can decode them to find out what unit will fit your situation the best. This Rockpals unit is actually missing a lot of features, but I knew that when I bought it, and considering what I'm planning on using it for and what I paid for it, I'm okay with that. And you might be okay with a lower priced unit also, depending upon what your use case is. If you find this content helpful, please hit me a like and a subscribe and hit the notification. Thanks, it's a really big help to me. Let's get going. So let's talk about key terms. So generally when you shop for a solar generator, you'll hear something like 300-watt generator. Okay, what does that mean? So there's two big terms that will come up when you're looking at these units. Number one is what they call the watt, and then second is the watt hour. So let's talk about what each of those means. So this is a 300-watt solar generator. What that means is the maximum amount of power that you can pull out of this AC outlet is 300 watts. That is the absolute maximum, and it will only do that for a few seconds, maybe a minute max. Its rated continuous power is about 150 watts. So you've got to look really closely as what the maximum power is versus the maximum continuous power. The reason why there's a difference is because a lot of items will cycle up and down a little bit as they turn on and off. The biggest perpetrators of this is anything with a motor or a compressor. Like my beloved chest freezer, when it's running, it only draws about 100 watts. But for about 2 seconds, when it kicks on, it draws around 800 watts. So this unit, even though the chest freezer only pulls 100 watts while running, this unit would not kick on my chest freezer because it doesn't have enough surge capacity to get through that instantaneous hump. That hump is really hard to measure. I had to use a special watt meter, a special amp meter clamped to the cord with a computer interface to be able to watch that spike because it happened so fast and then it settled down to 100 watts. So if you're looking at a chest freezer or refrigerator or something like that, you're going to end up needing double or more of what you think you will need to get beyond that hump. If you want to run power tools like a circular saw or a drill out in the field, that would be a similar situation. The running current may be only a couple of 100 watts, but that instantaneous surge might be 1,000 watts for a second or two. So that's what the difference is. This is obviously small enough that I'm not planning on running power tools on it, so that really doesn't mean a lot to me. The second number that you will see a lot is watt hours. So that is actually a measure of how big the battery is inside this unit. This is a 280 watt hour unit. It's fairly small, and that's okay. I'm all right with that. So what does that mean? So let's take the item that you want to run, you find out the current draw, and then you divide the difference. So my beloved pedestal fan draws around 40 watts. This is a 280 watt hour unit. So this unit would run my pedestal fan for about 7 hours approximately until this is completely depleted. All right. My electric blanket draws around 100 watts. which is underneath the threshold of the inverter. And so this would run my electric blanket for about 2.5 hours. There's a 10% fudge factor in there, so that's very rough. So this would run my beloved heated blanket for about a little over 2.5 hours in a perfect world. Okay? So those are the two big numbers. In my opinion, for general preparedness, a 1,000 watt hour unit should be what you should be aiming for. 1,000 watt hours with 1,000 or 1,200 watt inverter inverter output capacity. And the reason for that is that's really about the threshold that you need to be at to run your refrigerator or chest freezer for a minimum of a day, day and a half, based on the brand and based on my testing. A unit this small is really only good for charging phones, and running some LED lights, which I'll show you in a little bit, and some fans for a few hours. 280 watt hours is really not a lot for an actual emergency use. I bought this to run my ham radio gear out in the field and to be able to have to run my fans and be able to move them around when I'm in the garage. So this is basically just a portable extension cord. This is not my primary emergency power backup. So let's talk about the ports on the front. We've got one AC outlet. We have one 12-volt cigarette outlet. And what you're primarily going to use this for is for an RV refrigerator. They are significantly more power efficient than using the AC outlet over here. So if you're looking to keep things cold, like if you're diabetic and you need to keep your insulin cold, this is a great way to do it. Get a compressor style RV vehicular refrigerator freezer and run it off of here. They only pull about 40 watts approximately. So it's a great way to keep medications and other foods and drinks cold in an emergency situation. Over here, you'll see this pretty often. These are DC power outputs, and they call them 5521s. Well, what does that mean? So that is they are a power plug that is 5.5 millimeters on the outside and 2.1 millimeters on the inside. They look like a donut because they've got a little pin in the center. They're also sometimes known as an M plug, M as in Mary plug sometimes, and you use them for additional 12-volt output. Usually lights, there are rope lights and little LED lights that will use this plug, and there's a variety of companies that make adapters that come from this to Anderson power poles or to 12-volt cigarette sockets, so you can run additional 12-volt stuff like lights or perhaps a CPAP machine. If you have a cigarette adapter, you can run off of here. This is limited to 10 amps, which is the same power that is in your car. It's fuse rated, and that should be enough for the sorts of things that you'd plug in here. You would not want to plug another inverter into this to give you an additional AC outlet. That's just a bad idea. But for small vehicular stuff like refrigerators, lights, RV style appliances, this should be just fine. Over here, we've got a variety of different USB, USB-A, USB 2, USB-C, and these are for older phones, newer phones, and then brand new phones that have power delivery if you really want to try to run your laptop or power your phone very, very quickly. I like using the older style for my LED fans and LED lights that I'll pull out here in just a second. There's so many devices that power off of USB these days. You can find pretty much anything that you might want to run. I will caveat that the little USB fans that are like this big, in my opinion, are utterly worthless. They just don't move enough air to really do anything unless you put it right up in front of your face. And the amount of current draw, the amount of power that they pull versus the amount of air that they put out is just not worth it when you can have a 20-inch pedestal fan that puts out 1,000 cubic feet per minute and draws 40 watts. So I think that they're a waste of money for the amount of air they put out for the power. So the other port we've got up here, this is the DC power, or the DC power input for my home charger and also for my solar panel. So sometimes they'll be 5521s, sometimes they'll be Anderson power poles, which are little black and red squares. They're very popular in the ham radio community. I have kind of mixed feelings on them, but it is what it is. And so this is where you plug the charger into. There's another number to look at. The maximum amount of power I can put into this unit is 100 watts. That means the fastest I can recharge this thing from completely dead to completely full is about 3 hours. That's fine for me. That might not be fine for you depending upon what you're using it for. So if I were to run my fan all night long, for 7 hours, then I'd have 3 hours the next day to fill it back up. 100 watts is a little low, but this is a fairly small unit. Where you get into problems is with large units up over 500 or 700 watt hours that are still limited to only 100 watt input. The bigger version of this, they have a 700 watt hour version, which is still limited to only 100 watt input. That means in a perfect world, it would take 8 hours to recharge that thing. What that really means in the real world is you completely kill it and it's going to take you 2 days to recharge it on solar, which we'll talk about in just a second. So, small unit, not a deal breaker. On a larger unit, be wary of what the maximum power you can put into the unit to charge it. The other thing to look out for is the maximum charge voltage. With this unit, it's 24 watts. That's okay. On larger units, if it's that low, that means that you are most likely not going to be able to buy solar panels off of Craigslist to plug in to charge your unit because their voltage is too high and you'll end up cooking this. This unit was really designed for one thing and one thing only, and that's to be charged off of the mating solar panel that Rockpals also sells. This is the Rockpals 100 watt folding solar panel. You can see it's 4 little panels that fold up. What I like about this unit is that there are USB charging ports built into it. So I can charge my USB devices like my phone or my batteries without a separate battery unit. I can charge them directly off of here. That's pretty cool. This also comes with different adapters, so you can use this with different brands like Jackery or Gold Zero. That's also pretty neat. It uses MC4 connectors. These are standard in the solar industry. There's a positive and a negative that make together, and then it adapts to a 5521. So it's pretty versatile. I'm not displeased with that, but I'll show you the limitation to this when we go outside. Here we are in my backyard, and I know that that is east, and that is west, and that is south. For proper solar deployment, you are supposed to aim your panel south and up approximately 45 degrees. That angle will change depending upon what time of year it is and where in the hemisphere you live. So 45 is a pretty good split. In Texas, it's actually a little bit more shallow than that. That panel has no way to angle it to face towards the sun. Other brands have a little kickstand on the back so you can pick them up and angle them. You can try sticking stuff up underneath it. but yeah, that has never worked really well because it's in 4 different sections. It's too floppy, so you have to prop it up on something long to get it to tilt up. I have never gotten more than 60 watts out of this 100-watt panel in the real world. The final feature that is very uncommon is called pass-through charging. You would think in this scenario, if I have a 100-watt panel that is putting out 60 watts, I can plug my pedestal fan into this and it will run forever, since I'm creating more power than I'm pulling. I'm getting 60 watts in and I'm only pulling 40 watts out. So it'll just pass itself through and I'm actually making a surplus, so it would charge the battery while I'm running my fan. That is actually not the case. Most lower cost units do not support pass-through charging. So if I plug in an AC device into the AC outlet while the unit is being charged, it'll shut off. Some units will do pass-through charging on the DC, meaning the cigarette socket. So I could plug my RV refrigerator into this while it's being charged because it pulls so little, but I cannot plug an AC device into this while it's being charged. The circuitry inside doesn't allow that to happen. So if I want to run my fan with this unit, I essentially have to charge it during the day and then run my fan at night, and it'll run it till it's dead, and then come back out here the next day, put the panel out in the sun, recharge it while I'm baking during the day, unplug it, take it inside, and run my fan at night. Since my panel only puts out 60 watts in the real world, that means it's going to take me about 5 hours to recharge this thing from dead to full in a real world situation. How do I get that number? Well, you'll have to look this up for your city and your time of year, but in Texas we get about 5 hours of peak sunlight. So that's the maximum amount of time that the sun is hitting for the summertime in Texas. If it was winter in North Dakota, then that number is going to be significantly reduced. It'll be 3 to 4 hours maybe at best. Luckily, Texas and Florida, we get a lot of sun. The other catch to that is the sun's got to be out. Right now, it's fairly blue skies. That's been great. This is the first sunny day we've had in a while. I've been trying to make this video for weeks, but it's been overcast on the weekend, and so the panels puts out even less than that, if anything at all. So my 100-watt panel is putting out 20 watts when it's gray outside. More expensive units will overcome a lot of those issues, like the pass-through charging and max power output. That might matter to you, that might not matter to you. My larger units I built, and so I know what the power inverter size is, and because of the way that I built them, they will all support pass-through charging. That is one of the advantages to building your own unit, is you get to control the parts and pieces and make the capacity whatever you want it to be. But if you're going to buy a pre-made unit, just keep in mind the various limitations. They may or may not matter, but hopefully this will help you be informed when you're shopping around for different things for your emergency use. As I mentioned, this is not a sponsored video, but if you've stayed here to the end, I'll give you a little tip. If you sign up for RockPal's website, their mailing list off their website, they routinely send specials that are really quite amazing. I got this thing for $150. It's normally $225 something, and I got that folding solar panel for $99 with free shipping on both. So $250 for a unit and a solar panel with free shipping. Not sponsored, just a little tip for you. So if you found this to be helpful and useful, I would appreciate a thumbs up, a subscribe, and hit the notification for new tips and tricks and projects. Thanks, we'll see you on the next one.